we're going to talk about something very always relevant, which is, as a writer, how do you produce content quickly? And that's something a lot of writers, especially new writers, but even longtime writers struggle with. How do you produce a ton of content quickly? And this question actually dates back in the day, earlier 20th century, where you had pulp writers who literally produced reams of content. You had writers producing a new novel every month. And a lot of writers and a lot of people in the public have this sort of misconception that writers, we just wait till the muse strikes us and maybe we publish a book a year, if we're feeling like it. And but the reality is, to be a successful writer, it really helps if you can produce content quickly. And boy, do I have some experts in that area here today with me today. Gail being one of them. So Gail, you have written how many words in like the last week alone? Less than?
Just 30,000.
Only 30,000.
That's all. Yeah, 30,000. I was averaging about 6K a day, pretty much. And then I piddle around and make 7 one day, and then slacked back off to 4. But
what a slacker you were,
boy.
Rough day.
Such a loser.
So how do you how do you do that? I mean, besides using a time machine, which we've discussed how you have a secret time machine, but besides that,
it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't do it, and I really don't know why I have that ability, other than the fact that I've read 10,000 million billion books, and they're all just sort of like swirling around in my subconscious, in the swamp that is my subconscious. And I can literally sit down at the keyboard and just words come out. I don't know how to explain it anymore.
But that's a connection that I think a lot of people don't make. So as a reader, someone who's a voracious reader, that has helped you become a faster writer, because you have all of that content to draw from. Because there is that misconception, or certainly that opinion, I'll just call it an opinion, where some writers today say, oh, you don't really have to read very much. Just, you don't need to read to be a writer, just write. And so you're saying that maybe one of the disadvantages of that is that those types of writers maybe can't write as quickly, or at least not with the quality and speed that you're able to.
And there's also a lot of reinvention of the wheel. I'm going to throw that in before Gail starts talking again.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're not reading, you don't know what's out there, and so it's going to be harder for you to generate fresh new content, simply because you're unaware. Anyway, go ahead, Gail.
Yeah. Of course, on the other side of that coin is that you're always worried about regurgitating something that you read 20, 30 years ago.
Oh,
There's always that. I'm writing along and I say, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure that was in so-and-so by so-and-so. But then again, there's also a long and honored tradition of stealing ideas from other writers.
Yes,
exactly.
So, absolutely.
As Charlotte pointed out earlier, Shakespeare.
Yeah, exactly.
Shakespeare was the greatest thief of
granted,
all time.
There's nothing wrong with watching television to get ideas. And when I'm crafting,
right,
I went through 2 movies yesterday, and I'm not sitting there looking at the movie.
Right.
I was making Dragon notebooks, but I'm paying attention to the plot, and I'm paying attention to the characterization, because once you start writing, you can't help but do that.
Yeah.
And so,
sure.
But if you're only looking at the way things are written for 90 minutes or 22 minutes for a half-hour show, if that's all you're getting, and if you don't, one of the things I've learned about binge watching stuff, because I'm a Netflix addict, what can I say? Is whether you have season arcs, and you have a whole season arc is in addition to the episode arcs. And I've noticed as they get further along into seasons, they gave up on episode arcs. They're just telling, like Velen, they're just telling another piece and another piece and another piece and another piece. But you don't come to an end. You might come to a cliffhanger, you might not. Because especially around about season 7, they begin to run out of ideas, assuming they last that long.
Well, and going back to Gail's earlier point about if you read a lot, being worried that you might be regurgitating ideas, it also really makes a difference, though. Or I guess my question is, does it make a difference though if those ideas are coming from, say, Lord of the Rings versus, say, a story from the 1950s that most people maybe haven't heard of, that's really obscure? So where you're borrowing those ideas from, does that make a difference in terms of how you feel about doing that, or is it just, if I'm borrowing the idea, I'm just nervous that I'm not gonna make it my own?
Well, I have a passion for obscure writers and books from the last 100+ years.
Me too.
So they're all, and I think probably people who say only read Harry Potter and want to write something like that, then I don't see that they have a big pool of information to draw from. But it's just, I don't know why I write fast. That's the thing. I have no answer. It comes out, and I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to take advantage of it.
Have you always been a fast writer then, or?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. I can pretty much. Again, I was talking to our mutual friend Jim, and about we're currently working on similar projects, and he always. And when we collaborated, he would fuss because he said he'd get his part done, send it to me, and then mine would be done in like 20 minutes, and sit back to him. So he felt pressured about the collaboration, which I thought was absolutely charming. But I don't see it as a particular skill or talent. It's just the way my brain works. And I wish I could say this is what you do to do this, but I can't.
I will say something you told me. You said that you trust your subconscious, your connection to the collective unconscious, to have the words when you need them. And I tell myself that when I start now, I'm turning out all of maybe 1,300 words a day. But considering I've gone years and years and years without writing 2 words a day, that's a great improvement.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And sometimes I can do 2 episodes on 2 different things. It just kind of depends on for me, it depends on how much physical energy I have, which some days I have a lot and some days I don't have any at all. And, but just the idea that you know how to do this, your fingers work, plug your brain into the collective unconscious and let it come out of your hands, and whatever comes out, trust that it's going to be okay.
Exactly.
Trust yourself. Trust. You said that to me, so that's clearly what you do.
It is. Yeah.
So that's part of having confidence in your abilities, though, and that is, and if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I'm not saying Gail is ripping people off, but I mean that's Ray Bradbury, isn't it? He's the one that says, get out of the way of your own subconscious and just let it go or whatever.
He literally said beautifully and succinctly, he said, don't think. Don't think, because then you start wrapping yourself up in all these issues about what about this and what about that and what if I do this and it's not going to work, or will it work? Don't think. I have that written on right in front of my computer. Don't think. Trust the subconscious. Hit the keyboard.
Exactly.
Another way I've heard that phrased is people are like, you need to suppress or destroy that inner editor, get that inner editor the hell out of there. I think it was that Writing into the Dark book, Gail, that you bought me once as a gift, that where he talks about get that inner editor the hell out of there, out of the way.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that book.
Well, I'll tell you what I do whenever I'm starting. I'll read what I wrote the day before, and I will do a little bit of editing. But what so I mean, I don't kick the editor out completely. What I do is I clean it up a little bit, but that gets me into the mode. And as long as we're talking about hacks, that to me is one of my biggest hacks, is having a ritual in the morning. The same way you would stretch before exercising, or the way you would anything that you're doing, and then there's a certain degree of skill required. You like to try to get yourself into that headspace. And so for me, it's making the pot of coffee. It's reading what I wrote the day before and cleaning it up a little bit. Because that, of course, helps whenever I'm actually editing later on. I'm not having to spend as much time in the editing chair.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But just getting yourself centered and ready to work.
And remember, especially if you've got 4 things going at the same time, which I do.
Yeah.
Remembering which story you're in, and getting back into that headspace, and to a certain extent into that voice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, if you're working in multiple voices,
of trying to write in Gail's voice on Gail's mystery.
Yeah.
Ah!
Right. You've been good, not alive. What is that?
I think Jerry decided it's time to cut grass.
Oh,
I was gonna say that sounds like a Godzilla-sized fly is buzzing near one of us.
It's probably a good idea to end this right around now, because he's going to be cutting grass. So.
Oh, okay.
Well, we've already done 2 videos, so we got our productivity out of the way, I think.
Yeah.
Let me stop this now though. But one last thing is, something else maybe. You touched on rituals being important, Lewis, and I think we should do a future video on what types of rituals help us get into the frame of mind to be creative and to write. So anyway, be looking for that as a future video on for the mugs.